And welcome back to a fresh episode of the Business Growth Show. Delighted to be joined by Megan Holsinger today. Megan is the Director of Customer Success over at JB Sales. She brings a mix of experience in customer success teams and sales teams alike. She's been a revenue generating, quota carrying sales professional herself and now helps companies around the world learn how to do the best profession in the world, which is sales. Megan, a very warm welcome. How are you doing?
I am great. Thanks for having me.
No worries. So looking forward to this one. And this is a bit of a debate, not quite as much as sales versus marketing, but sales versus customer success, which
Yeah.
is not too far off really. So this should be quite an exciting show. There should be quite a good bit of back and forth, bit of banter in terms of what we want to chat through. But I'm not going to mess about, Megan. I'm going to put you straight away on the spot and ask you, sales versus customer success, which is more important to a business?
I think having a sales-minded CS team is the most important thing to business. I mean, if you take a step back, obviously sales is what generates the customers, right? I mean, you can't ignore that. That's sort of a given. But I think what is so overlooked is the power that CS teams have to generate even more sales, right? So taking a look at your existing teams right now and really asking yourself the hard question of, does my team generate revenue? Do we do something? Do we add to the overall bottom line, essentially, right, of a company? Easy to say those things about sales, a little bit more difficult, a little bit more of an evolution, a little bit more of a transition when we talk about CS teams.
Got it. Okay. Interesting. I mean, I myself do a bit of both. So I'm carrying a bit of a quota, bringing business and also managing clients and customer success. So it's a bit of a tricky one to balance at times. And sometimes it can be difficult to know which to prioritize. So I know yourself, you've moved from sales, Megan, into customer success. Do you have a preference on which you prefer, or do you think you found one to be more useful and more important than the other?
Yeah, I personally enjoy customer success, but only when it is sales focused. So I've been in a bunch of different types of CS roles. So I've been in a role in CS where it is just very kind of reactive. It's account management, it's relationship management for sure. And did I learn a lot? Absolutely. I wouldn't, take those experiences away. But the roles that I like the most is when I have a dedicated book of business, but I'm in charge of growing it, right? I'm in charge of expanding it. I'm in charge of, there's a number, right, that I want to get to from a growth perspective. And so for me, it's a combination of the sales. It's a combination of having that quota, having that commission, but partnered with the relationship component that you get when you're in CS.
Interesting. So that brings us on to a straight point. I love that. And I love that we were talking about before we hit record, being proactive rather than reactive with your customers. And like you say, so perhaps you could share some examples, because typically I know in my head, Megan, when I think of account manager, which is probably a negative way to look at it, I think of someone that perhaps takes orders, has a few customers, has a few great clients every couple of weeks or every month. They give them a few orders. They know that's coming in. They know they're probably going to just about hit their target, whether you're a business owner, whether you're a sales professional, and you've got these good few customers, and they'll keep you tricking along. And I just that's the image I have in my head, be it bad, be it good, that's what it is. So what's the difference between that, where you're just kind of reacting to the sales that are coming in, and then being proactive? What's some examples of what you find effective, Megan?
Yeah, and you're not wrong. That is the image a lot of times of CS folks, but it's changing, and it's been changing. I would say really the shift has taken place over the last is 1 to 2 years, but really even I would say post-COVID or post kind of the start of COVID, it's taken on an even stronger kind of push. So, an account manager is a great profession, and you do a lot of good in that profession, but it's the shift in mindset. And so the way that I like to talk about it is, everyone has sort of their own tolerance for risk, right? So what I mean by that is you either get up in the morning and so you look at risk and you think, you know what, that's exciting. I like the concept of kind of not knowing maybe exactly how things are going to play out, or I like the idea of doing something a little bit different and trying something new. But there's also a person that wakes up in the morning and looks at risks as a way to kind of mitigate it, right? So their tolerance is not that high, and they prefer to have things kind of be steady and stable and consistent. And that's the difference between sort of a reactive versus a proactive CS person. You need both. I don't want to say that having folks that are there on the receiving end of customer, questions, complaints, whatever it is, wins is not a good thing. It is. You got to have those folks there. But what you want to also think about is the fact that there's so much opportunity within an existing client base to ask more questions. And that's where, that curiosity factor comes in, and where you can start being more proactive. So for one example is, instead of just sort of waiting for a customer to maybe email you, even if it's like a complaint or a question, or maybe it's a renewal or something, there's some sort of an event that's taking place, and that's when that you're going to be talking to them. Instead, how do you engage with them ahead of time? How do you provide value even when they don't even know that they need it, right? And so what are ways that you can provide messaging? What are ways that you can sort of tee up opportunities within an organization, ask for introductions to other parts of the organization, all sorts of different ways that you can sort of creep in to a person's business, but you got to do it. You got to actually, make the effort. It's not going to come to you, right? It doesn't fall on you magically one Monday morning.
Got it. Okay. And that it does remind me a little bit of discovery in the sales process, where you're asking these questions, you're being curious, you're trying to understand where the business at, what their business goals are in terms of revenue, in terms of where they see themselves going in the next 6, 12, 18 months, and all those kind of alignments and goals that what they want to get to with their sales, with their marketing, with their business. So that kind of sounds like there's a bit of synergy between those two. So if someone's perhaps transitioning, Megan, from a sales-based role, and let's say they're, I don't know, an SDR, or perhaps they're only a new business sales professional, and they're looking to move, or perhaps they've been directed by management to go into more of a customer success role, are there any things that they should bear in mind, or have you got any tips or recommendations for those kind of people?
Yeah, I think so. Typically what we see, or at least what I've seen in my past, when someone does make the switch from, kind of sales to CS, the best ones are the ones that start out, as an SDR, maybe move into an account exec role, but then realize what they like the most about sales is the relationships. A lot of AEs or, account executives have to give up these relationships and toss them over the fence to CS. And there's a group of folks that really want to hang on to those relationships. And those are the people that I tend to see, make that transition better, right? Because they already have sort of the sales mind, and now they're just sort of adding the relationship component to it. I think it's, CS does have, depending on the business, depending on what it is that you do, there is a bit more, I don't want to say project management, but there's a little bit more organization. There's more detail. There's more things that you have to kind of keep in place, right? Again, depending on kind of what you're doing, onboarding, right? Like there's a lot of things that CS can own that can all of a sudden become something that is really kind of important to kind of keep track of. The other thing too is time management. So, I mean,
just going to say that.
Yeah.
That's a great point. I was just thinking in my head, because I mean, here, for example, we're managing quite a lot of web-based projects, digital marketing projects, all gone at once. And then also we've got to manage the new business, so the new inquiries that are coming in, and maintaining that balance. So how do you find that, keeping the balance, Megan, between obviously keeping on existing projects, but then also in your case, as you've got a quota to hit, to make sure that you're also doing the activity that's going to make things happen, that's going to bring in the cash?
Yeah, and I also would say, just to add to that too, given the fact that so many of us are working from home, it's even that much more difficult to kind of chunk out your time, because everything sort of melds together, right? So your
Sure,
home,
certainly
working,
does.
for folks that have families, right? Like it all just becomes this sort of big day that you do
Yep.
over and over and over again. So for me, I'm a huge believer in blocking out time on my calendar.
Hmm.
If you were to look at my calendar, you'll see all sorts of different acronyms on there. I allow clients to book time on my calendar. We use something called Calendly, or excuse me, we don't use Calendly. We used to use Calendly. We now use Chili Piper, which is great too. Both are awesome. So Chili Piper allows me to kind of block my time so that clients can book on my calendar as they need to, and that's great. But I only allow them to book on certain days, and I only allow them to book for certain periods of time. That helps me manage the days that I know I'm going to be dealing with, maybe prospects in my sales hat, or maybe I'm dealing with customers. And then, for instance, 2 days a week I have blocked off just for training. So I deliver training for JB Sales. I deliver a couple of different programs for them.
Okay.
So I block my time off accordingly, because I know I'm not going to be able to do all the other things on training days that I would be on other days. So blocking is important. Learning how to say no. We as customer success professionals, even I would argue as sales professionals, are so inclined to say yes because we want the deal. We
Yep.
want it to move forward, right? If we're on the CS side, we want to please the customer. There's ways to do both. You can still get the win, but also put yourself in control of your own time, of what you're doing, and the value that you're providing, right? The road goes both ways, in my opinion. So it's not the easiest thing. I wish there was a magic button that I could press that would just sort of make my day go by perfectly. Distraction is also really hard. One of the things that I'm trying, and this is something that's new to me, but if you have an iPhone, you can put limits on the apps that you're using on your phone. And part of my sort of New Year's resolution, even though I don't love that, but I did it, is I put limits on the number of apps that I can use on my phone. It's a distraction to me sometimes, and that's another way that I've been really productive in being able to focus on the stuff work-wise.
I think I definitely need that app for LinkedIn. I'm a bit of a scrollaholic.
Yeah, I am too. And so I literally put a limit on it. So I am
Yep.
only allowed an hour and a half of social apps a day.
That's a good move. I like
That's
that move.
And that includes LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, anything. I'm only allowed an hour and a half, and that's
All
it.
right. Got it. Some nice tips there. So, Megan, let's pretend we've perhaps brought on board a new customer, or actually, this could be a second quote. You've brought on board a new customer. Do you have like a roadmap that you follow if a new client's just been onboarded? Say the sales team have brought them on, and then they've passed them to yourselves to look after. Is
Mhm.
there a strategy that you like to take on board, as in how you introduce yourself, how you plan, how often you're going to communicate with them? Should we be communicating with our customers really, really regularly, like almost weekly or monthly? Is there a strategy that we should be following so we're not following up too much, but we're staying top of mind and obviously getting the business while we can, but at the same time keeping them happy so we're going to retain their business?
Yeah. So the key there is, and I'll steal this from John Barrows himself. He always says, "How do you stay in front of them without being annoying? How do I keep stay top of mind without being annoying?" And that is always a tricky one, and I'll talk about that in a second. But everyone's going to have a little bit of a different onboarding process, depending on what it is that you sell and who you're selling to. My piece of advice, though, and this is something that I incorporated in two of the startups that I was at prior to JB Sales, was getting CS involved actually pre-contract. So a lot of times what was happening, and I was noticing this, is that sales would sign the contract, and then there was some sort of process that happened where there was an introduction made to CS. I actually started experimenting with bringing CS into, quote unquote, the sales process. It made for a more seamless handoff. It introduced CS earlier on in the process, which made it easier for CS to be able to work with the customer post training, right? They already kind of knew what they were getting themselves into. So that is one thing I strongly urge. If you can, you don't maybe do it on all of your clients, but if you can pick sort of maybe your bigger ones, or you want to experiment on, maybe a handful, or maybe kind of get a relationship going between an AE and an SC to see if that works, I would strongly encourage bringing CS in. For us now at JB Sales, it's a little bit of a different process. So because we sell sales training, a lot of the times I'm, as a CS person, getting involved very early on, pre-contract, talk about the type of training that we're doing. But sometimes I am also happen to be the one delivering the training. It depends on sort of what we're doing. I deliver our Driving to Close program, and I deliver a program called Driving Results for Customer Success. So if the prospect is looking for CS training, I am almost always brought in early on because I am talking about it. I live it, I breathe it, I know it. And then once we deliver the training, I am also in charge of, I wear many hats, but I am also in charge of making sure that training sticks from a reinforcement perspective. So that's really different for each client. That might mean, review calls. That might mean getting on and talking about specific metrics that they wanted to achieve, prior to training, and how are they hitting on those metrics post training, right? So it looks a little bit different, but it never ends. I'm talking to all sorts of different types of people all day long, and that's one of the best parts, I think, of being in CS, is that you get that variety.
Yeah, and in terms of kind of an ongoing relationship, Megan, so let's say, for example, when we've just brought on board a new customer, we've perhaps, I guess, sales, and if you were involved as a customer success specialist, you've probably talked about where they want to go. In your case, offering training. So let's carry on with that. Say they're doing training because they want to, I don't know, 2x their sales targets for this year, for the next 12 months. So as we're account managing, as the time's going by, like you said, we've got to check in with them, but we've got to not be annoying. We've got to add that value, and we've got to be a useful resource that can be someone they can trust, that they can get in touch with, and at the same time, we want to be able to grow that account over time. So, yeah, what are some ways that we can kind of check in to make sure that they actually are getting to where they want to be, as in your case, getting closer to sales targets through the training that you're providing, but being useful still. So making sure we're still providing useful content to them, or being a good resource.
Yeah, and that's a kind of a pet peeve of mine, is that, I refuse to send an email to someone and say, checking in, hi, that's it. That it provides no value. I mean, other than the fact that I guess now the customer sees you as potentially, caring enough about them to email them, but I would actually prefer to think about it a little bit differently. So when I follow up with a customer, I'm either doing one of two things. I either have a very specific question for them, meaning so there's something that I either need from them or that I want to check up on. So we'll use your example of, we want to grow our sales, our inbound leads by 2x, whatever that is, right? My question will always come back to that specific metrics, and I'll use it again and again and again. And then I will provide an example of a component of our training that has that can be helpful, almost as like a reminder to them to be able to do that. Otherwise, it's just sort of like, it's nice. It's an email, but I don't know of a reason why I would really want to open that email up and respond to it, unless that email had, oh, wait, there's that metric that I care about. And oh, wait, yes, there's that piece of content that I need to be reinforcing, right? Like there's an attention grabber there. There's something that you want to make sure you're engaged with. The other thing I do a lot of, so I'm a big fan of Owler. So Owler, if you're, for those of you that are listening, are not familiar with it, it's just a way you plug in company names that you want to follow, and it gives you a bunch of hits on any kind of news. You can actually kind of segment it out. Like, I don't want to hear about certain types of news with clients. It's really great. Every morning, my morning starts with me going through my Owler feed. And it helps me better understand kind of, is there anything that's happening in our client base right now that I should, in fact, email or call and talk about with them, because it could lead to either a way to use our content better that they've already been through, right? Or maybe they've acquired a company and this would be a really good opportunity for me to ask for an introduction to their VP of enablement or VP of sales of that new company, right? I just actually won a customer that way about a month and a half ago, by just asking for the introduction. Cool about it was great that you guys just acquired this. You guys did really well with this training. I'd love to make the introduction when you have a moment. It's about asking for the business. And that is another way that you can kind of stay top of mind without necessarily being overly annoying.
Nice. I like it. So yeah, just recapping that. So we're talking about, rather than just sending the generic follow-up emails, actually using apps like Owler that are going to give you useful information about your existing customers, your existing clients, and then sending them useful pieces of content and reminding them about the goals, the metrics that you've been discussing from day one, and saying, look, remember, this is your main goal for the year. This piece of content, like this video or this blog, this article, this podcast, I think would be really useful. Because some of our other clients have put that into action and it's really helped them do XYZ. So I really, really like that. Cool. And moving forwards, Megan, is there any strategies that you've used? So say, for example, we've got a good client. We've perhaps been working with them for a few months or a year. They're going quite steady. We're making okay we're doing okay in terms of revenue from them, but we'd really love to grow that account. Are there any unusual approaches or any approaches that you found have been useful to step that up, rather than just saying to our clients, have you thought about doing this? Insert new product here. What have you found has worked quite effectively for you when it comes to growing your existing customers' accounts?
Yeah, I mean, when you get into, larger accounts, where there's multiple different divisions, multiple different groups, regions, oftentimes we'll train the EMEA group, but we know there's a North America group that we want to get into, or vice versa, right? Like there's always sort of knowing that ahead of time that there's opportunity there. So one of the things that we do when we're working with prospects in the beginning stages is we actually ask a number of qualifying questions ourselves to the prospect that will help us get a better understanding of the opportunity that lies ahead. That way, it's easier for me when I'm working with them post-contract, determine where I want to spend my time. So I want to spend my time in places where I know there's opportunity, right? I don't want to keep going back to a client that I know we've tapped out on them, right? They're not growing as much as we need them to be. They're not hiring as much. I'd rather spend my time focusing on the clients that I know there's potential. I do a lot of work in LinkedIn Sales Navigator. So I will absolutely go in and find names, titles, different folks that I might want to either connect with or that I may know from a previous role, or that has used. I'll look at their profile and see that they were at a previous client of ours, right? So any sort of connection that I can make to them from a relevancy standpoint is really important. If I can't provide relevance to them, if I can't provide them with something that I know is going to be useful, I'm not going to connect with them, right? It's just, it doesn't help them. It doesn't really help me at the end of the day. It's just a connection. We all get so many connection requests on LinkedIn. I want to connect with people that I know that can provide value to me. So there's not an easy way to sort of just wake up in the morning and say, I'm gonna make all these connections and go get all these opportunities. It takes persistence. It takes patience. It takes sometimes a Zen-like attitude for you to have to really get to it. But the persistence, I think, is key.
And in your experience, Megan, perhaps from a more simpler perspective, is there ever a good time to ask existing customers to upgrade? So be it whether it's bumping up their package if you're a software as a service company, whether it's upgrading their training, whether it's simply selling them a new product. Is it just a case of we have to wait to deliver on what we said we were going to, and then we just simply bring it up on a call or email? Or is there a bit more to it?
I think it's a little bit of both. That's a really good question. I've seen many CS people go too quickly. So we haven't even deployed, what they originally bought, and they're already asking for more. It's about knowing your audience and knowing what you can ask and what you can't ask. That's not the easiest thing to get overnight. You have to
Sure.
kind of learn from experience of when, you should ask or you shouldn't ask. But I think, if you're deploying from a SaaS perspective, if you're deploying the piece of advice I would give to folks is making it known that the deployment of software is only the beginning, and that there's opportunity for growth, and that they could use this particular feature down the road. If you plant that concept with the prospect, or you plant that concept with during maybe your kickoff call that you're having with the client, if you're just planting that idea, that'll take you a long way, because you're basically making the assumption at that point. You're saying, you know what, we can absolutely talk about that. One of the things that we'll want to touch base on in 6 months from now is your ability to do X, Y, and Z. We don't need to do that now, but we'll want to kind of cross that bridge. All you're doing is you're just setting them up, and you're saying, listen, we're going to have this conversation whether you like it or not. So it's all about expectation setting. Not being afraid to ask questions, even if it doesn't mean that you're going to ask for the opportunity right then and there, but just asking questions about their business, asking questions about how they make money, about their budgeting process, about their decision-making process, about their leadership team. Go on and on and on and on. You can gain so much information about a company that will then set you up for success when you quote unquote ask for the order later on.
So good. I love that planting the seed option. So when you first bring them on board as a customer, you're saying, look, well, providing we implement XYZ really well, then you'd probably be looking at feature A, feature B, feature C, because it's going to help you achieve this even better. And just putting that in the back of their mind. So when you bring it up a little bit later, they're not shocked, they're not surprised, because you've already had that upfront conversation. And that comes down to the questioning. And I think because you've got that experience, Megan, in sales, that's obviously really, really useful for yourself. What do you think about customer service or customer success reps actually speaking to their sales team, and maybe even talking to guys and girls that carry out discovery? Because a lot of these questions, in my opinion, it sounds like it could be really, really insightful if they're understanding these key points in the motivators, asking questions about budget, asking questions about goals, and all that good stuff that's going to give you what you need to know to grow these accounts, and just asking sales team how they do it, and then putting it into play when you're growing your own accounts.
Yeah. And that's exactly actually how I created the Driving Results for Customer Success program that we have. So it's centered around question asking. It's centered around all the same types of questions, traditional discovery qualification type questions that sales professionals have been using, but putting them into a CS friendly approach. And that is a huge component of it. I think partnering sales and CF together is not only, helps both sides out, because I do actually think it's really important for sales to see what CS has to go through on a day-to-day basis. So, it kind of goes both ways, but I'm all about kind of creating a single thread too. I think consistency is super important. It's going to be helpful for the growth of a company if you can align your sales and CF teams with the same types of discovery calls, questions, qualification questions, process. You'll have more consistency. You'll have more predictability. It'll become that much more easier to manage your pipe, right? So I think absolutely the more that you can get those two teams to kind of coordinate together, the best. That's not, I don't want to, that sounds really easy when I say it like that. It's not. I've been in the middle of trying to get these two teams to work together. It takes time. It takes effort. It takes a joint effort between sales and CS leadership, for sure.
Yeah, I was going to say the amount of companies I've been at where the sales team, myself included in my younger days, just literally selling over the project, handing it to the customer success team or the account management team, then running for the hills. I'm off to sell some more. See you later.
Yep. And I had to work at a company. I was at a running CS at a company once where I was realizing that my team was getting thrown just really bad deals. Like it was, our churn rate was becoming just awful. And one of the things that I put in place was sales actually could not pass us off a deal unless there was I think it was 4 things that had to be checked off, like
Yep.
our persona, like bunch of different stuff that we needed to make sure. And once we got that in place, it took about 3 months. We actually started noticing that the churn rate was getting way better, because we are actually now getting clients that were better prepared, that fit what we needed to do, and that we're not just being kind of sold, used, and dumped onto CS. So I mean, we could talk about that for days.
That could be endless. I mean, that's interesting in itself, just because, like you say, churn rate is obviously crucial. Because we all know that how more expensive it is to bring on board a new customer compared to growing an existing client. So if you're bringing on board deals, new customers, and then they're passing off after a month, 2 months, 3 months, then you're chucking money down the drain, literally. So if, like you said, if customer service can actually work with sales to set those metrics and set out what actually defines a great client, because you're dealing with them ongoing, they're passing them over, unless they are account managers, customer success managers as well.
Right.
That teamwork sounds really, really important. So just to wrap things up, Megan, we've talked a lot about things going well, but I'm sure you've had your fair share of, and so have I, because not every project goes perfectly. We know that for sure. Otherwise it wouldn't be business.
Right.
So how do you get over sticky situations? So let's say you're a few months into a project, you were meant to hit metric X or target X, it's not quite been hit. What are your ways of dealing with those kind of issues with customers?
Yeah, that's actually good old-fashioned objection handling. It doesn't fit the term objection handling as you might see it in sales, but it translates relatively easily into the CS side. So I have coached and managed many people who do not, they get a customer complaint and they see it as conflict, or they see it as, something's gone wrong, whether it's been on the client side or whether it's been on your side. And their strategy is to run for the hills. And that is, while that may be tempting, Lord knows I've wanted to run for the hills many times before. You have to be able to address it head on. And the way that you can do that is to be confident in how you approach these objections. So when I say objections, I mean, it could be, a customer coming back and saying, hey, we thought this was going to happen and this actually happened. Or, hey, this is way too much money for us to be spending on an annualized basis. How do we, reduce cost, right? Those are all fit into the objection category. And the way that you can get better at that and be more confident about how you approach that is by asking more questions. And I know that sounds a little bit counterintuitive, but if you're asking a question back instead of feeling like you have to answer it right away, you're gaining more understanding and kind of where they're coming from, where their thought process is. So I love phrases like, heard that budget's a lot right now. So can you help me understand a little bit more about where you are spending budget? Can you help me better understand, where, who's involved in the budget process? Or, in terms of rollout of our existing product, can you help me understand, who's really benefited from it? I'd like to focus on that. And then we can sort of segment out the folks that need a little bit more help. I'm making this all up, but that's the kind of stuff that you want to push further in. It'll help you when you're having these kind of tough, difficult conversations. Also, never be afraid to ask for help. So if you are a CS person out there and new to the role or whatever, and something goes wrong, go to your manager. Don't be afraid to go to your manager. Your manager's there to help you. A good manager will partner with you. They might ask you some questions, so definitely have your story in order, right? Know the facts, but they're there to help you. They might have a different view. They can step in when need be. I see a lot of professionals kind of avoid their manager because they think they're going to get in trouble or they don't want to be forthcoming. There's nothing worse to a manager than being caught off guard and being presented with a catastrophic situation with a client when it's too late.
Brilliant. Really love that questioning beforehand. So I mean, it's almost everyone's worst nightmare when a customer comes to you and they want to end the contract, unless they were a terrible client and they were really, really hard work throughout, then that might be a dream come true. But yeah, let's say they were a decent client and they come to you, they want to lower spend or they want to cut the contract. So like you said, asking questions, so good. So really working in, can you help me understand what's happened, or can you help me understand if what we discussed in our initial call is still the priority, bringing up what they discussed.
Yep. Like what's happened, what's shifted, kind of walk me through this. It gets you a lot of information as opposed to just sort of saying, oh no, they want to cancel. And you know what, at the end of the day, maybe you do lose them. And you know what, that's okay. But what you did to go through the process is you're better for it than not.
Yeah, exactly. Like you say, Meg, at least you fully understood where they're at, why they've made the decision, or if you can get that intel, it might even help you guide them, whether it is lowering their spend or whether it is suggesting them to another product or giving them professional guidance based on their full situation. Even if it means referring them to another partner, at least they trust you and they might come back in the future, right?
Right, exactly. And you've done yourself a favor because you've actually developed your business acumen a little bit. You've actually increased your confidence a little bit. That is a huge thing. If you're learning about a situation or how a customer does something, you can use that example again and again and again with different customers. Maybe you tweak it a little bit, maybe it's a little bit different, but you build up a repository of events that you can then sort of reference throughout your career. That is a huge win when it comes to breaking up with a client or, being told no or being rejected. Those are such growth oriented steps in a person's career that shouldn't be missed.
Megan, this has been brilliant. Really, really useful episode for anyone, any business owners or anyone looking to grow or make better use of their customer and client accounts. Really appreciate you coming on. And with that, please do tell us more about how everyone can learn from you, how they can connect with you, and the best way to get in touch.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, you can find me on LinkedIn at Megan Holsinger. So look me up there. I'm posting stuff. I'm more so sales and CS focused. I would also strongly encourage you to follow JB Sales Training on LinkedIn and then also JB Sales Training on Instagram. So we put out a ton of great content through Instagram. Definitely look on there if you're a big Instagram user, although I've now limited my social media.
Good on you.
We'll see how long that lasts, but we're going to try it for now. But definitely look us up there. Connect with me on LinkedIn if you have questions about CS. I'm usually really good about getting back to people and being super upfront and honest if I think I can help them. And if I can't, then trying to find another resource.
Awesome. Megan, thanks once again for coming on. Really appreciate it.
You are so welcome.
Cheers. And if you enjoyed the show, be sure to hit subscribe wherever the heck you get your podcast from. We interview business leaders each and every week to provide actionable tips across marketing, across sales, all to help you grow your business. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next episode.